make sure the first class is the presentation of the course guide. And I will do it, and we will debate it, we will explain, and everybody knows. And the students know their expectations, what I'm expecting of them. They know how to get the resources. They know where to get the resources. And then they know the kinds of activities that I will expect and that I'm going to take them. So nobody's ambushed. There must be congruence between your course content and the stated objective. If you have objectives and the course content does not reflect the objective, there is a problem of congruence. Does it mean that because you have a course guide, that the learners will not still benefit from you when you are facilitating? It is a continuous relationship from the day they start the course and the day they achieve success. Because at the end of the day, the evidence of your success is that your learners themselves are succeeding.
Tips of success should be positive as much as possible. What they need to know to be able to be successful.
Now, there is this lady who came from the north and she wanted to take distance learning in the south. I'm going to tell you some of the problems that the lady had. First of all, her name is Mary, a domestic help, and enrolled in a university in one of the southwest. She had a school certificate from one of the northern states. She could not speak enough English, but she had credits in all the papers, but her English was still difficult to communicate effectively with her. She was not computer literate, but she had enough understanding of the computer because of JAM to be able to do the entrance exam in that Southwest University. Now, she was given a few days to pay her fees. She told her guardian that she needed a laptop for the program, and they got her one used laptop, which they fixed. And then the registration process was both online and offline, but it always required her to go to the center, to the distance learning center, and spend a lot of time, spend a lot of money, or go to the cyber cafe. She was getting frustrated, and those she was living with were getting stressed up because of paying for transportation and because she was no longer useful at home. It was now looking like a face-to-face program with an attitude. Barely 2 weeks into the course, she requested for a smartphone, that the laptop was not useful to her because she had to buy a MiFi, and that is going to be more expensive. So they had to borrow to go and get a smartphone on credit. After the phone purchase, they now had to buy a power bank. Are you taking note? They bought a power bank, and you know why they had to buy a power bank. 4 weeks after resumption, they were told that they had to sit for the first exam. They were never told that before. There was no scheduling. The scheduling that was there was not followed, if there was any. And they had to, so the calendar had been short, had been compressed. The e-tutors and facilitators barely met with them. The institution simply dumped materials online and asked the students to engage. The second semester was a little longer and had more tutors engaging, but the scheduling was off. And sometimes late at night, they will be having facilitation because that was when the e-tutors and facilitators were available to handle the students. The learner sometimes woke up with tired eyes because she would read with her phone touch or read with her phone. By the way, the sponsors still had to buy photocopies of the learning resources that were supposed to be online. Of course, the paper tutorial was getting more intense, so they had to also get themselves additional teachers that they paid for, many of them of doubtful competence and qualifications. Now, just last week, the learner had an eye problem arising for using her phone to read and straining looking at the phone. Now, I have given you a small story. I can't tell you everything because I don't want you to know the institution. Now, do you understand what the problems are? Do you have an idea of what the problems are? So the course guide is framed to eliminate or minimize these problems. That is why we are trying now that if you are going online, there must be a course guide. The course guide is designed to ensure that such problems like this are minimized. So we are going to look at now, how do we prepare our course guide for distance learners? We are going to look at the definition of a course guide, the purpose of a course guide, the value of a course guide, components of a course guide, structure of a course guide, and then we'll have definitions and discussions. Now, after this presentation, we are going to divide ourselves into work groups. Each one of us will work on the courses in preparing a course guide for the course that we either facilitate or for such courses where we are e-tutors. And we'll do that for a number of hours until lunchtime, and then we will then review what has been done, whether we have followed the procedure. But in this presentation, after giving you the course guide, we will not just, after going through the theory, we will also give you a template, exactly 2 templates. One, a generic template of what a course guide should contain. Then a template produced by the Distance Learning Center that should guide how you prepare your course guide. Are you following me so far? Now, I need to tell you that I've been a lecturer in linguistics since 1985. Is there anybody who was not born then, in 1985? I actually joined, I was barely in my 20s when I started lecturing UI. And so, because I know some of you are already wondering, why is he not retired? So I did not fiddle with my age. I was a young man. Most of the students in my class were older than me then. And they would come in front of me. My first day in class, as I was writing on the board, they were saying, Iwaju class. And then I put my name there. That's classroom management. I knew that if I came to introduce myself formally, I would have a problem with the class. They were all 27. The average age then for UI was about 27 years. So I knew I would have a problem. And I was not yet 23. So I wrote there, Francis Egbokhare, your lecturer for lane 241. And then they started batting their hand. Amariri. Say, Amariri. So this one is our lecturer. And you know, when they want to talk to me, they don't want to address me as sir. So they will make sure that they come to my front so that I will see them before they, because they didn't want to be telling a much younger person sir and so on. That was how things were at that time. But for the last 25 years, I have tried to produce course guide for my students. That's what I do. And the first day of the class, that course guide, the first hour we spend in the class is spent discussing the course guide. So that's what I want you to do after. It's not just for distance learning. You will see exactly the value of a course guide so that your lectures become predictable. Expectations of the students are moderated. There is a scheduling to the limits of that you can control. You schedule. And then they know exactly what is required of them, the grading and everything. And so the tensions and frustrations that accompanying a class situation is minimized. We don't say it's eliminated. And then you have your learners in mind in developing the course guide. And I'll tell you, one of the first things I also do is I try to profile my learners in the class. I want to know exactly. So they start with an introduction. They tell me about the school they are coming from. I find out information about them, about the baggages they are coming from with. And then I know a bit. I think the proper thing is actually to circulate a questionnaire. Unfortunately, UI does not help us with that kind of questionnaire, which will give you the learner characteristics. And that helps you to manage the class situation. Today, at my master's level, I have students from diverse classes, universities. the gap between their knowledge is so wide. Some at 100 level, some are at MA level. So how do you manage that kind of wide gap in your, if you don't know, if you don't have the learner characteristics, you will not know how to manage such a classroom situation. So, these are the ways we are going to go about it. So what is a course guide? It's a comprehensive roadmap for students. In this case, in distance learning, we call them learners because the focus has shifted from teaching to facilitating. So they are no longer just students, they are learners. And in fact, all of us are learners. Providing essential information to navigate the course successfully. Course guide provides essential information to navigate the course successfully. A well-structured course guide empowers students to take ownership of their learning. They take ownership because it's a facilitation. You are not a teacher, you are facilitating. The teacher is the course material because you have put yourself into the course material. So what you just do is to facilitate learning, but it is important for the learners to take ownership of their learning. What is the purpose? Why do we do this? The first thing is that we use it to orient students to the course structure and expectations. So what structure is the course going to take? What are the expectations? Second, we outline learning objectives, learning outcomes, and assessment criteria. What are the objectives of the course? You know, sometimes many of us go into the class and we start teaching without any objective. What do we have? The objective is what we have in mind as what we, the knowledge we want to pass to the students, the skills, the experiences we want to pass to the students, the learning outcomes. At the end of the whole exercise, what do we expect the students to be able to demonstrate? And then how are you going to evaluate? So, you know, at some point in my life, when I was very zealous, I saw, as a young lecturer, I set a question once. When I tried to answer the question myself, I realized that I would need textbook to answer the question. You are laughing. It hasn't happened to any of you here. I said, contradistinguish between, because I thought you had to go to the class to finish the students with grammar. But that is not what assessment is about. And I think that's why for a lot of people in the sciences, after your exams, you come out with your assessment faster, while we in the Faculty of Arts are still battling. Because the lecturer is battling also with his grammar. Whereas, in your case, the answers are very clear. So what we are trying to do also is, we want to know what the assessment criteria is. This is not about assessment. I'm not going to be teaching about assessment. But it's also important for you to let the students know what the assessment criteria will be. Then you provide a study plan and a timeline. Because these people are self-learners, they don't, and their circumstances and situations are so diverse. Imagine somebody who is working in Bovas as an attendant, as a fuel attendant. By the time he's done and gets home, he's probably going to rest for about 2 or 3 hours, and he starts learning. So you want to be able to assist with a study plan and a timeline. Then, of course, identify the required resource materials, and then you facilitate communication between students and instructors. If we already know what the purpose is, what is the value of doing this? One is that it will clarify expectations and requirements. Clarity. Clarity is one value. 2, help students to set goals and prioritize their tasks. Then the third, it enhances organization and time management skills. So you can see the complexity of a course guide, how it's going to look like. 4, reduces anxieties and uncertainty. It encourages self-directed learning and autonomy. And then fosters effective communication with instructors. You don't want somebody calling you at 1 a.m. because he has a problem. Then 7, supports academic success and achievement. 8, it provides a reference point for course policies and procedures. And then 9, helps students stay on track with coursework. And then 10, enhances overall learning experience. So that's basically, at the end of the day, is the learning experience that is the focus. So now let's look at the specific benefits. What are the specific benefits? We've talked about general value, the purpose, and so on. One is that there's a general improvement in the understanding of course content and course structure, better preparation for assessments and evaluation. Exams now become easy to conduct. Students, learners are ready for the exams because you have given them everything that they need. It increases confidence and motivation. There is no ambushing. You know, some lecturers will just come, the students are behaving badly in class, and then he announces a test. Have you ever noticed that before? Have you done it? You say, okay, bring out your pen and your papers. We are doing a test today. They will all calm down. But the lecturer who also does that, is a tyrant. You can use it to calm them down, but you cannot use that kind of test to assess. But in order to avoid something like that, it's better to have a course guide. You know what it also means is that a number of bad male lecturers, we also use that set up for something. You know what I'm talking about. Then it enhances critical thinking and problem-solving skills, promotes effective navigation of course materials and resources. It reduces stress and improves work-life balance. It improves the retention and completion rates. Now, the big problem with distance learning is attrition. Attrition level is very high because we are not interacting and solving students' problems on the go. You know, you can be in your office now and a student knocks on your door and says, "Ma, can I see you?" And you say, "Come in." And then they begin to explain this. Because you are interacting physically, you are able to solve a lot of problems. You don't even know that you are solving a lot of problems. But these are people who don't see you often. They are left by themselves. So the course guide is now like that lecturer who has a timed presence and is able to solve problems for the learners. I remember the first thing I always tell my students when I get to class. I ask them, "What is my name?" I write my name on the board. I say, "Professor Francis Egbokhare." I say, what is my relationship with you?" They'll say, "You are our teacher. You teach so. I say, "Thank you very much. God bless you. I am not daddy. I'm not grandpa. I'm not uncle." I say, "So address me as professor." So I say, "Because by the time you start calling me daddy, you want to put your hand in my pocket." I say, "So," and then we laugh. And then what have I done in that case? I've been able to put them at ease. And I also let them know that the lecturer is a human person. You can relate. But many of us don't have office hours. We don't schedule our lectures properly. And so students don't even know when to relate with us. And then I said that attrition rate is very high in distance learning. There's a certain university that says that the number of students they have is over 500,000. But the actual number of registered students who are ongoing is less than 100,000. So where are the others? So attrition is one of the problems. The throughput has to be improved. You cannot improve throughput without a good course guide. So when you are moving online, what you are saying basically is that you are minimizing human contact, physical contact. But you cannot leave a vacuum. There must be something that takes the place of that human contact. It enhances student-instructor relationships and increases accessibility for diverse learners. Finally, it supports development of essential skills for lifelong learning. Now, we will look at the principles of course guide for ODeL. But as the instructor, as the teacher, you can do what you like with your assessment. But what we try to avoid is being punitive. And then for that very time, for instance, a student may have a legitimate reason for not being around. And it can create a problem. And that is why continuous assessment, let me tell you what I do. Even for postgraduate students, they come in with their notebooks. Each one of them. Then the class rep comes in with an attendance register. We must take those attendance every day, every time we have a class. Now, in my class, attendance is 10 marks out of the 40 CA. If you sit down here today and you go out of this place, there is no way I can convince anybody that you did not get something, no matter how yes, from just being here and listening. So, if you have the most mumu of students, at least you earn 10 marks from being punctual and for attending your class through. To say the person is a zero, ends a zero, is to say that the person is dead. So, and the 70% attendance earns you something. Then the CA is such that every assignment I give, they enter into the notebook and we assess. At the end of the day, they may have done 9 assignments. We aggregate and split into 3, and then we give them their scores. I don't set tests. Say midweek, mid-semester, I don't do it. That's me. That's just me. Because I found out that at the end of the day, you have people with big hard disk, but very small RAM. You understand what I'm talking about? They have extensive memory, but very, very little creative processing capacity. I am more interested in processing. So because why do you need big memory when you have your laptop, you have Google, you have AI? You get the point I'm making? You can store all those ones and free your brain for more important creative things. Are we getting the point? So the first thing I do when I come to class, I tell my students that I don't teach phonology. I use phonology to teach them to think. So I'm not a professor of phonology so that you memorize things for me. I will use phonology to teach you how to think, so you can apply it anywhere. And additionally, I don't emphasize answers. There are no right or wrong answers, but I emphasize questions. If you know how to ask questions in the right way, you will reach the right answers. Is that not so? If you draw a parallelogram this way, and your students give the sum of 3 angles, and you ask them to give you the fourth, and they are able to do it, what is important? If you now turn the parallelogram, and they can't, it means that they have not mastered the principles. So basically, that's me. But I know that mathematics, statistics, all these are different disciplines, which we need also different methods of ensuring that students learn them. So the whole thing about this course guide thing is to ensure, as much as possible, to the best of our ability, we put into the course guide something that will change and we assist the students to effectively optimize. We are talking about optimize the learning situation. What are we trying to achieve actually is dynamic equilibrium. I hope I'm communicating. Is that equilibrium is no longer, in terms of this situation, it's not a static thing. It's dynamic. As things are changing, they are evolving and ensuring they are continuing to maintain the balance. And so that at the end of the day, the expectations are met, they are well motivated, and they learn. And for us, we don't end up producing students who don't give a good account of themselves. And they come out and say they are graduates of statistics. And then when you hear them, there is no statistics in them. You know one thing about data, I like data. I like data a lot because for me, although there can be variations in interpretation, but the data itself doesn't speak of itself. It is the way you interpret them, the data parameters. often we get it wrong, especially also in this country, because of the data parameters, the way we disaggregate, the way we aggregate data, is such that interpretations may be skewed, and then you see people arguing over nonsense. So anyway, I like data. I like figures because we can at least agree on the validity of what we see before us. The nature of evidence is a different matter. What constitutes an evidence is a different matter. All right. Now, what are the principles of course guide for ODeL? We have to specify the objectives clearly. The objectives must be smart. They must be specific. They must be measurable. They must be achievable. They must be relevant and time-bound. Your learning objectives must be smart. And then, of course, it must be learner-centered. We focus on learners' needs. So you look at their prior knowledge and experiences. You see, one of the problems we have to deal with as lecturers today is the garbage that is brought in from the school certificate level. You know, we basically are teaching students now to be school cert holders. I don't know if you are having that experience. Is that you can't start at a degree level work. You find that you are teaching some basic mathematics that they should have. A student comes in with an A1 in maths, and he cannot even solve simple simultaneous equation. And you know, which is should just solve even by just looking at the equation, should give you the answer from his head. But he cannot do it, and you are wondering what happened in this. So we still have to deal with that, and so we need to know about their prior knowledge and experiences. We have to be flexible. Flexibility. There are different learning styles. There are different learning spaces. So the course guide must accommodate learning styles and learning paces. Some people prefer multimedia learning, right? I need a text. If you like, give me all the videos in the world. I will still take this text. I prefer it over anything. It has nothing to do with your capacity or whatsoever. That's your learning style. Some will prefer just to listen. If you talk for too much for me, you are putting me off. I enjoy my own company. I will be doodling. While you are talking, I will be doodling. Because I say, I will still read the material anyway. So, you have to ensure that the learning styles are captured. You must encourage autonomy in your design, self-motivation and responsibility. The learner must take responsibility for his or her learning. And then, of course, structured learning path. Organize content into logical, manageable units. Sometimes, we begin with abstractions. In distance learning, that will not help. We should begin the structuring. You may need to have to restructure your offer in such a way that the learner start with the more concrete to the more abstract. But often we don't do that. In your face-to-face, because you are in the class, you can help students manage the abstractions. If you want to talk about principles, for instance, theories in science, you want to deal with something like in your physics, you are talking about Hooke's law, for instance. You want to talk about elasticity. Is it not easy to start with things like Hooke's law before you start to talk about quantum entanglement? Right? Yeah, it's easy to experiment with that with an ordinary. This man is laughing. I'm actually, that's my pastime. I look at cosmology and quantum phenomenon. That's my pastime. I may not be able to go to the lab, but I can engage you in a lot of that. So I enjoy the reality, that we are basically living in an illusion and that the world itself is a matrix. The reality you're seeing here is simply frequency, vibrations, and we are just basically not what we think we are. We are seeing what we are programmed to see. Now, alignment. We ensure consistency between objectives, content, assessments, and activities. Now, you set your questions. Your assessment must reflect the objectives of the course. If you go outside the objectives that you have stated and you start setting questions, then there's a problem. Abi? And so that alignment must happen. Accessibility. Equal access for diverse learners. Now, do you know that there are learning disabilities? Some people are autistic. Some have attention deficit disorder, right? Hyperactivity disorder. There are all kinds of, in fact, some are dyslexic. But we don't even have information about that. By the time students are registering in distance learning center, we actually ought to have profiled them, give them a form to fill. And then we can basically assess them and know exactly what, so that the lecturer is giving a feedback on the nature of students who are coming to his classroom situation. And then so you can adapt in terms of how you manage. So we have all those things in mind, and then we give the necessary flexibility in order to give accessibility to learning disabilities as well. Do you know that about 26% of Nigerians have disabilities? 26% of that are people with disabilities. And the number is growing. And even today now, there is now an additional disability. It's hunger disability. A colleague was telling me recently that I saw him carrying this from a meeting. He was holding what do you call it? It's a takeaway. And I said, I wanted to take it from him. I said, oh boy, bring that in. He said, Oga, if in the past, as I'm leaving that meeting, I'm handing it over to a student. He said, but now, I put it in my car, it will follow me home. I said, Wahala is... Now, interactivity is another thing. Support services. We must ensure that we give enough support, provide information on available resources, such as tutoring, technical support, and counseling. There must be continuous evaluation. We've talked about that. Then consistency, use of standardized formatting terminology and design. And then above all, transparency. We must clearly outline expectations, requirements, and evaluation criteria. Now, in the ODeL specific considerations, study guides must provide detailed study schedules and materials. Scheduling, you must tell them, give them the schedules. Communication strategies, channels of communication. Who are the instructors? Who are the e-tutors? When is their office hours? It will be stated in the study guide. Technology integration. What kind of technology? Do they need a laptop? Do they need a mobile phone? What is the specification of the mobile phone? How much data would they require? And so on and so forth. What kind of internet access? Is it bandwidth? Sorry, is it a broadband? And so on and so forth. Then, of course, you provide information on assessment strategies. How are you going to assess them? What are the strategies? Are you going to give quizzes? Are you going to have discussion groups and so on and so forth? How are you going to evaluate? These have to be, there must be fairness in assessment methods. Learner support. You must offer guidance on time management, goal setting, and self-assessment. Then you must be sensitive to the cultural dispositions of people. And this is one of the things. So in your use of language, you cannot, sometimes, let me tell you, the words we use ends up putting off people. When you are talking down at women, for instance, in your material, or you are addressing a class situation, or you are always cracking jokes about women, you know, it will put off some of your female students. So you may joke in class, but it's not at the expense of anybody or any group. So we have to be very careful. People are sensitive. It may not matter to the majority, it will matter to an individual. So it's important for us to be culturally sensitive. Or you crack religious jokes when you know that Nigeria is a of religious differences. And in the first instance, it will obstruct your relationship between yourself and the totality of your students. Now, let me tell you one of the things I do to my students. Once they start sitting down, I discover that they are dividing themselves into groups on the basis of religion. The first thing I do is I break it. I rearrange them. I say, look, in this class, I don't care which religion you practice. I am not here to teach you religious, zealotry. So, I want a mix-up. And when you come to class, take the seat available, move around. And then I put them into groups that will mix them into different. They won't even know that I'm seeing the tendencies. And I'll break it. After a while, you discover that these guys, they are just, they just naturally are aggregating on the basis of their natural affinity. Either they meet in mosques, they meet in church, they meet in this thing, and so they are already building friendships on the basis of where they congregate. But then I help them to facilitate new interactions and new friendship. It's part of the class responsibility. Then, of course, the issue of quality assurance. We must ensure that the institutional quality policies are adhered to. Now, let's look at the sample format. Does anyone want to make a comment, make a contribution? Then we will look at the sample format.
Thank you, sir. I'm Bolanle Oladejo from Computer Science Department. The course guide is an indispensable document, especially for a new class, which is not only to introduce our students to our expectations, the plan, the course plan, as well as what those students should also be on the lookout for. Is also a planning document which helps us.
Listening, when you were bringing down your eyes, I thought you were sleeping, but I can see that you were listening. You were only just in a mode. How would you say in a computer? You were in a hibernation mode. We have a responsibility to do the right things. So, and then to enforce and to ensure that the right things are done. And I think it's the realization that things can be done better that has led to the idea that things must be measurable, things must be predictable. Everybody coming to the distance learning center must know what the interactional relationship will be. And the course guide is the beginning of that process. So if you have the guide that says interaction will be for 7 weeks, you will do your tests and your exams at so point. It is now left for you as the lecturer to fulfill your side. Then the learner also will ensure that they fulfill their side. And the center, if anything must change, because there could be acts of God, if anything must change, the information channels will be there to communicate to everyone that we are making so adjustments. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So we are now moving because the behavioral attitudes that we need for online learning is totally different. You can't make a promise that you don't keep online. You can't say you are not available, you are not around, that the students should go home. Something happens. Actually, in a perfect situation, what should happen is that even the billing, the payment, should be automatically processed by the system to ensure that if you do 1 minute less, you will get 1 minute less pay. Jimmy, is it not possible? So people who are not even meeting up, I always love the money instrument. I use money because you see, even Ifa Oracle now doesn't see anything without it used to, in those days, we used to put cowries in the mouth. We say, talk to the cowries. Say, 2 things on your head. We put it down. Ifa will see. If you go to Ifa now and put naira down, whether you will see anything. But if you put dollar and pounds, what you did not ask Ifa will see it for you. So now let's look at the format, the sample format. Now, the format is How is the course guide supposed to look like? You have to have your course title. So when you have that UI format, you must put in your course title. You must put in your course code. Then duration of the course. 1 semester, for instance, which is 12 weeks plus 3 weeks, that's 15 weeks. 3 weeks of exams. And then, of course, you have your credit hours. 3 hours means 3 units means 3 hours per week. Then practical hours. 1 hour will mean how many? 1 practical unit is how many hours? I think it's about 3. In fact, some of those practical courses themselves are actually micro-credentialing courses. Somebody who wants to run pure water factory, you don't have to call it pure water something. You can just come to learn a few things about how to manage clean water processes. You don't need to have it. Or those are some of the things that distance learning for STEM and STEM disciplines, those are some of the things that we should now start developing and repackaging and rebranding, the things that can affect the informal market. Then course description. What is, for instance, you have to give an explanation of what the course will be about. Course objectives. You list about 4 or 5 main objectives of the course. We will give now a sample of a completed description. Then you have course outline, where you have the topics inserted, the learning materials, then of course the assessment and the weighting. You will give the assessment, you will give the weighting, you will give the due dates, and then of course the time for the final exam. I'm going to give you a completed one so that you can see how each of these things are implemented. Then the learning activities. Are there going to be discussion forums? Would you have video lectures? Would you have quizzes? What are the technical requirements? Computer specifications, for instance, software requirements, and internet connectivity. Now, there is no need to produce an HD video lecture, and you know that your learners have not been told the kind of specification of the smartphone they need. A Palasa phone cannot access an HD lecture. There are phones that can access SD. There are phones that can access HD. Now, the other question you want to ask yourself, what is the economic status of the students? For your information, ChatGPT they use linguists, basically. We are the ones who design the models. Linguists. It's a large language model. And then it's a closed loop system, which means it can only work with information available to it. And so, the way you frame your questions will determine. Sometimes I will deliberately ask you some kind of questions, and the brain will collapse because it will not have access to those. But it's a very important tool, and I used to get the information that I was looking for. And I found out that if I were a head of an institution, there are certain things I will not do because it's not going to be financeable. So we should do some level of volumetric analysis, and for us to be able to see the decisions we are taking, if it's based on opinions or if it's based on data. Then technical requirements, support services. You want to have instructor contact information, technical support contact, academic resources, and then you want to have evaluation criteria there, participation, assignment, and so on, and then academic policies. Plagiarism. What is your policy on plagiarism? Late submissions, grading scale, and then what is your policy on AI, use of AI? I don't know, does UI have an AI policy? You will now see how all of these requirements, we have put it into a course. That way, you will be able to refer to it when you are looking at the UI format. Then after this, we'll look at the UI format. The UI format will be sent to your devices. Introduction to Business Management. Right? Course code, BM101. Duration, 12 weeks. Credit hours, 3. Course description. You can see the description there. Very lucid, very clear. This course provides an overview of so. But, you know, in your handbook, departmental handbook, you already have a course description, isn't it? What do? Copy it. But if it is not well written there, please polish it a bit to make it simple, readable, and understandable. Course objectives. You also have course objectives in that place, isn't it? In your departmental handbook. If you don't have it, you now have to state it. 1, understanding the basic concepts of business management. Understanding is not a good word. So you can describe, you can analyze, you can define, you can explain. Yes, and then you can, so there must be action verbs. Is that clear? Now, the whole idea is that if somebody understands something, what is the evidence that he understands? Is to be able to do all those action things. So, but if you simply say understand, you cannot measure understanding. There is no way to, you can't go into the person's brain and probe it and to see exactly whether there is some basics for that. Now, the next thing is outline, course outline. You have your weeks. You can see how it is listed in weeks. Week 1, what are you going to do? What are the topics? Week 2 to 3, what are the topics? Planning and decision making is the general lesson for that week or the module. Then you have goal setting, decision making, making models and techniques. Then you have a case study analysis. Week 4 to 5, organizing and structuring is the broad. You will see that each of these things is related to the objectives. You are simply expanding on the objectives in terms of topics. Then week 6 to 7, leading and motivating. And then week 8 to 9, controlling and evaluating. So control mechanisms and performance metrics, budgeting and finance management, quality control and continuous improvement. Then week 10 to 12, external environment and ethics, globalization and cultural diversity, business ethics and social responsibility, crisis management and contingency. So you can see, by the time you look at the lessons and the activities, you have covered the objectives of the course. Then what are the learning materials? What are the required textbooks? What are the recommended readings? What are the journals? What are the online resources? What are the online lectures? You can even have TED Talks. You see, one of the things we don't do, there is so much of resources in UI, like our inaugural lectures. We are not even using them. It can be an inaugural lecture that relates to a discipline, your area, can be a resource. But you don't have to ask them to read everything. You can also list the pages or the topics that they can read. You know, these days, I am so good with 2 things. One is that when I'm listening to news, I know when I'm being propagandized. The language. So I'm so good to say, okay. And then when I'm reading something, you will discover that it's like in every book, it's like importing Coca-Cola from abroad instead of importing concentrate. If you bring the concentrate, you can always mix it with your water. But if you import Coca-Cola, you are importing the bottle, you are importing the water. The real Coke inside is small. Most reading materials are like that. The nonsense is 70% of the book. So it's so easy to point to, sometimes by the time you read an introduction of a book, you are done with the book. Sometimes the introduction will lead you to the core area, and then you can decide, do I want to read more? So it gets to the point where you can say, okay, as a facilitator, go and see so pages. You can highlight for them. You can bookmark. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it doesn't always have to say, read everything. I had one lecturer in semantics in Uniben. He said we should read 2 books in semantics. Each of those books was about 500 pages. I had to read the 2 books. Semantics 1, Semantics 2. By the time I finished the thing, I could see my brain processing. I was hearing it like a computer. That was when I knew that this brain is active. It works. It will just shut down. I will notice it that it has stopped. You know, it was then that I realized that this brain, it will just stop. I'll say, my colleague, my mentor will say, Francis, what's that? I say, my brain has hanged. I say, I need it to reboot. And then, of course, assessment. Assignment 1, assignment 2, final exam, you will state exactly the nature of the assignment, case study analysis, 20%, due week 4. When is it due? Group project, 30%, due week 8. Final exam, 50%, due week 12. Then learning activities. Then the learning activities, discussion forums, video lectures, quizzes, group project, and then technical requirements, computer, Windows. You have the technical requirements will be supplied by Distance Learning Center. So don't worry about this. They will give you information about the technical requirements. Then you have to supply support services. What's the name of the instructor? The email, the phone number. Preferably the Distance Learning Center email. Who are the technical support contact? Your e-tutors and so on. Academic resources and so on. That will be supplied by Distance Learning Center as well. Then, of course, important dates. Please specify important dates as a way of guiding the students. You can put that in the relevant section in the UI format. So what we are going to do now is we are going to break. While we are breaking, the UI format is going to be projected and then also circulated in your devices, so you can have access and make reference. The whole idea is that we will now, when we come back from the break, you will sit down and develop your course guide yourself. After we have done that for a while, those who are ready to give us something, to show us something, will come and present, and we will critique and advise on the way forward.